We got several different stories from several different media outlets, you guys. It's time for another episode of the World's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another episode of the World's Newsround, where I cover various stories from outside of the UK. The date and time of this is the 11th of June 2024 at 8:30 a.m. UK time. And we start with Euronews, guys, with Europe veers right, but centre ground resists. And what does the EU elections mean and what's next? So before I give my initial thoughts, I think the best way to do that is to listen to this piece here from Euronews, who have this this piece on basically what has happened with regards to the outcome of the elections from the EU. So let's have a listen, guys.
Parliament, the 10th legislature will hold.
The far right may have made gains in last night's elections, but the centre-right still holds on to power. According to the figures, the Christian Democrats of the EPP, the Social Democrats and the Liberals of Renew continue to drive politics in the chamber. However, this alliance also has its own flaws.
Ils sont divisés sur les principales questions, notamment tout ce qui peut être économique et social, tout ce qui a trait au pacte vert, à la transition climatique. Et là, les alliances, au cas par cas, selon les textes, peuvent bouger. On peut avoir les Verts qui rejoignent les sociodémocrates, voire les libéraux. On peut avoir le PPE, le centre-droit, qui irait vers ECR, c'est-à-dire les conservateurs et nationalistes. Et au gré des textes, on pourrait voir des majorités qui changent. C'est ce qu'on a vu dans le Parlement précédent. Ça pourrait être un peu plus accentué sous ce Parlement-là.
If the centre of the political landscape holds, the EPP could be tempted to move closer to the radical right and extreme right, represented by the Conservatives, Reformists and the Identity and Democracy Group. This option, however, would be complex to implement.
There's two options. There's either a coalition with the EPP, the Renew, and the ECR, so let's say a center-right coalition, or a right coalition, which would include the Christian Democrats and the two far-right parties, ECR and ID. I see both problems with both, because the center-right coalition, here Renew has already announced that it won't work with the far-right, so this is politically impossible, even if it would be possible by numbers. And then the right coalition, so the EPP and the two far-right parties, here I see an issue because the EPP, while Ursula von der Leyen has said that she would work with the ECR, she has excluded to work with the ID.
One issue is the distribution of the 100 or more non-attached MEPs who do not belong to any group. These members have the potential to join up with far-right parties.
Yeah, it's an interesting outcome, guys. We're going to look at that board again in just. I'll tell you what. We'll have a look at the board here. So this is the final outcome. I like what they've done here with this graph from Euronews. So this was what it was in 2019, guys. So this was what it would look like in 2019. So you had the European United Left there on 37. We had the Greens, European Free Alliance on 72. We had the Socialist and Socialist Democrat Party on 140, 102 the renewed Europe there, that was there, and then the EPP, the European People Party, had 177, the ECR, the European Conservatives and Reformists, of 68, and then you had the ID, the Identity and Democracy, on 59, and then 50 was the non-inscriptive ones there. And now, if we go to 2020 to now, after this election, you can see, if I just push it back and forth there, you can see the change that there has been. So you can see there have been more independents have been gained, more there. So if I just look, so there, for example, the IDs there, they had 59, nothing too much there on 58. The ECR, how did the ECR do? They made gains. They got to 73 there. The EPP's European People Party, they made gains as well, from to 186 there. The Renewed Party, which was on 102, they've dropped to 79. So quite a massive drop from before, from the last elections there. the Socialists and Democrats, who were on 140, they've dropped to 135 there as well. So the Greens, who were on 72, they've dropped to 53 there. And then the European Unite Left on 37, they just dropped 1 seat to 36 there. So, so what does this mean? This means that while there still is a centre ground in terms of European politics, those on the far right don't really still have enough control. And we kind of talked about this beforehand, before the results, that we do. I think everyone agreed that there would be gains made by those on the right, but not enough for any kind of control. I think we can agree that that was going to be the case. But obviously, this opened up the door for more of those on the right, on the so-called right, some of these right parties, to apply pressure to the centre ground. And it obviously gives the parties on the left, the so-called parties on the left, such as the Greens and the European Unite Left, less influence there. Of course, coalitions are going to matter, obviously, in the coalitions that are formed as well. But I also think that the 55, the new seats here, some of the new independence members here that we have here, the non-inscripts and the 55 at the moment to be decided new seats. I think that's obviously going to play a fundamental part in this as well. But it's really fascinating to have seen. But we're not at that point yet. But obviously we can see that the influence of the right wing and the influence that right wing media is having within the European Union is having an effect. And it's definitely a cause for concern. But it's interesting numbers, to say the least. So let's have a bit of a read. So the pro-European parties at the centre command a majority despite voters veering to the right, but Ursula von der Leyen's path to re-election is fraught with difficulties. Around 85 million voters across 27 EU countries had their say, and right-wing parties have seen a creep up in all corners of the continent, tilting the balance of power in the European Parliament. But the projected surge in support for the far-right parties was not pronounced as some had expected, mirroring it would mean there is sufficient political will. The pro-European coalition at the centre will hold. I do think there was some share, but not in the levels that they were expecting, I would say. Although more strained than ever before, the so-called grand coalition between the centre-right European People's Party, the EPP, and the centre-left Socialist and Democrat Party, S&D, and the Liberal Renewed Party group secured 403 lawmakers. That's around 56% of all seats between them, according to Monday's morning's estimates. These parties have for years cooperated at the EU level, building firewall to prevent the radical right from entering the political mainstream. While their majority is now narrower, these groups could continue to work together to ensure that the EU legislative machine operates smoothly during the upcoming 10th mandate. All eyes will now be on the election winners, the EPPs, which scored a clear victory and consolidated its dominance in the new chamber. Its lead candidate, Ursula von der Leyen, has previously indicated her readiness to work with a certain party sitting with the hard right European Conservative and Reformist, the ECR. But the initial signals coming from the EPP camp, however, suggest they will stay tuned to their traditional allies at the centre. European President Robert Michel told Euronews, from the first projections, it looks like the constructive pro-European centre has held. Ursula von der Leyen has also offered to work with socialists and liberals to build a majority in the centre for a strong Europe, carefully calibrating her words to appease critics who have slammed her recent overturns to the hard right. In other words, the centre is holding, Ursula von der Leyen added, but it's also true that the extremists on the left and the right have gained support, and this is why the result comes with great responsibility for the parties in the centre. And we've already read in that. So there's the numbers there, obviously, the party groups and the seat changes there. So you can see lost 1 seat, the lefts, lost 19, the Greens, the S&D lost 5, the Renewed Europe lost 23. The EPP gained 9, the ECR gained 5, the ID lost 1, and non-inscripts lost 5, and to be decided new seats for 40 gains there, just for in terms of the context of the numbers there, guys. However, since the European Parliament works through a stable coalition, but rather issue-by-issue coalitions that form according to the legislative bill at hand, now since groups do not always vote in the blog with rebellious comments, It could mean narrow voting margins, especially for sensitive files such as those related to the European Green Deal. The limited room for manoeuvre could see the EPPs rely on partners to its right to added to ad hoc basis, including new hemicycle first decision to usher in a new Commission president. Ursula von der Leyen's future hangs in the balance. Yeah, it is on edge at the moment. So it's possible this may have updated, obviously, by the time you guys watch this. So after an EPP party romped to victory, increasing its seat share by 8, Ursula von der Leyen is set to have her first shot at securing 5 more years at the helm of the European Commission in accordance with the so-called I can't say that word, sorry guys, process. But her re-election chances are being complicated not only by the upcoming of the new parliament, but also by President Emmanuel Macron's decision called for a snap legislative election in France. And we're going to come to that in another article, guys. Some say a weekend Macron and an embattled Chancellor Scholz, whose German Socialist Party finished third, trailing the main opposition CDU-CSU party and the far-right Alternative for Germany, could derail her nomination. EU leaders are due to gather in Brussels to formally nominate a candidate for the top commission job on June the 28th, just days before they head to the polls in France, with Ursula von der Leyen deeply unpopular in France, even though the French EPP's delegation oppose her re-election. Nominating her days before the ballot could dent Macron's population further. If she does pass that hurdle and is nominated by EU leaders, she will then need to secure the backing of an absolute majority of 361 newly elected members of the European Parliament in a secret ballot. That vote was initially scheduled for mid-September, but according to media reports, that could happen as soon as the 18th of July during the inaugural sitting of the new Parliament in Strasbourg. In 2019, Ursula von der Leyen passed the test by a razor-thin margin of just 9 votes. This time, national delegations with her EPP's grouping could oppose her re-election, and if the Socialists and Liberals rally their members to vote for her, there are ample possibilities for small national coalitions to rebel. These narrow margins means Ursula von der Leyen can rely on the support of lawmakers from Giorgio Mendi's Brothers of Italia FDI party, which clinched an impressive 24 seats according to preliminary results. It firmly cements Giorgio Mendi's position as a power broker on the EU stage. By relying on Mendi, Ursula von der Leyen risks entrenching left-leaning allies and is unlikely to get the backing of the Greens, who also voted against her back in 2019, who suffered some of the biggest losses on Sunday night, losing 20 seats and seeing its power in the Helm cycle eroded. Yeah, they did lose quite a lot of seats, the Greens there. That was not good for them. The arithmetic of the European Parliament can also shift once newcomers or parties that are currently politically homeless in the European Parliament negotiate group affiliation. Talks on party affiliation are expected to kick off Monday, so they would have already been discussed. With many of these parties belonging to the far right, it does not mean that a potential reshuffle could bolster the number of the two far right groupings, Identity and Democracy ID, and the European Conservative for Reformist, the ECR. Parties currently categorised as non-attached, including Viktor's Orban Fiskus, estimated to have secured 10 seats, which look set to join the ECR and further boost the nationalist group in numbers. Marine Le Pen, whose French National Party was the big winner on the right, clinching more than 31% of the vote and prompting President Emmanuel Macron to call a snap legislative election, has also indicated her appeals to form a hard-right supergrouping, including Giorgio Mendi's FDI lawmakers. It has cast Mendy as a kingmaker, and she could also courted by Ursula von der Leyen at the centre-right. Mendy is also likely to play her cards carefully, as cozying up to Le Pen could ruin her opportunity to collaborate on ad hoc basis and thereby have a definitive stake in the shaping EU policy. Parties currently have a political family, also include an embattled AfD of Germany, which despite a recent raft of scandals involving probes and foreign influence and neo-Nazi ties, came in second in Germany with 16 seats in the European Parliament. Expelled from the Highlight Identity and Democracy ID group at the end of May, it is unclear whether AfD can join forces with other radical parties to form a fringe group at the very extreme right of Parliament. To do so, it would need at least 23 lawmakers from at least 7 EU member states. The reshuffling of the groups could also further dent the number of centrist Renew Europe groups, which suffered massive losses, dropping 22 seats according to estimates. Their president, Vasily Haga, has already indicated that the Dutch People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, the VVD, will be expelled as early as Monday for agreeing to enter a government with Geert Wilders' far-right party for Freedom, PVV, in the Netherlands. The Dutch deal was struck just days after the Renew Europe group publicly vowed to never enter government with far-right parties at any level. It could see Renew's seat numbers drop to 76, putting added pressure on the centrist coalition and further stressing the numbers von der Leyen needs to confirm her re-election. This is very interesting indeed. So it's not obviously just about what's happening in these. It's not just the aftermath of this European Parliament, guys. It's also about the impact, obviously, that is in the actual nations themselves and how they voted and what the impact this has. Obviously, I will discuss the French snap election in a separate article later, but just on the EU Parliament, obviously there's lots of wrangling to go through still, and I'm sure this will not be the last time I talk about this as well. And I think that it could have been a lot worse. I think is the message that I have. It could have been a lot worse, but this is where those on the centre and left parties need to do more to appeal to voters, need to push back against some of the policies that the so-called right, centre-right and parties they need to push back on. They need to show people that they stand for them. And we don't want these parties having overall control in the EU, because I don't think it would not be in the interest of the European Union, and certainly would not be in the interest of nations. It definitely needs to be pushed back on. I'm glad the centre still has much control, but it is slowly being eroded, and I think that there is great cause for concern. It is. We'll obviously have to wait and see, obviously, when the new seats come in. Obviously, I'll keep an eye on it, guys, as much as I can. I do need more of an expert when it comes to EU on the channel to have a talk about this more in detail. But it won't be the last time we talk about it, guys. But final thought is obviously, like, it could have been a lot worse. I think is the message I have. It could have been a lot worse. But the centre still holds. Obviously, whether Ursula von der Leyen will still be the president or not, I don't know. I don't think she'll get it. I don't know. She may pull it off. She may not. Time will tell. We'll have to keep a close eye on it, guys. So the next one I've got for you guys is from Al Jazeera. Obviously, this is supposed to be happening this month. So 90 states have headed to Ukraine's peace summit, but Russia is absent. Russia was not invited after slamming the event, but officials suggest Moscow can join the process down the line. So obviously the event in Switzerland, this is happening, probably either happening already by the time you guys are seeing this. Getting lots of nations on board to try and negotiate, try and sort something out, to some kind of settlement, or not so much peace, but just rallying more nations behind Ukraine. This is what this is about. And against Russia and Putin, to say that you can't do what you do and get away with it. Is this summit going to make a massive difference? No, I don't think it will. As far as I'm aware, I don't know if China's attending, but I will read the piece in a moment. But obviously, this peace summit has been taking place in Switzerland. Well, obviously one of the most neutral countries in the world, so without a doubt one of the best places to do this. Whether this will have an impact in any way or shape or form with any kind of negotiations or any kind of agreements between Russia and Ukraine, I doubt it very, very much. But it's obviously trying to get some more countries behind Ukraine. I think it really, really is important. So 90 states from around the globe have signed up to attend a conference aimed at finding a route to sustainable peace in Ukraine. Switzerland has said, but Russia will not be represented. The Swiss president of Voller Ahmed told reporters in Bern on Monday that the aim of the event on June the 15th and 16th is to agree on a path towards the end of the war that started nearly 28 months ago when Russian forces invaded Ukraine. However, Russia will not be present at the conference, which Switzerland is hosting at Kiev's request. Bern has previously said that Russia was not invited, as it had signalled it was not interested in participating. Moscow has maintained that Switzerland is no longer a neutral country due to its morality of sanctions imposed by the European Union. Well, you guys invaded another country. No, I don't agree. I think Switzerland are still a neutral country on this. However, the Swiss government said in a statement that the gathering will aim to jointly define a roadmap on how to involve both Russia and Ukraine for a future peace process, which is why there. And I think if the I would have said, yeah, that despite this, I would have said to Switzerland, I would have publicly said the door is still open for you, Russia, if you want to join. That's what I would have said. I would have said the door is still open for you. Amrid said that a handful of the confirmed participants are from organisations like the United Nations, with the representing countries of about half of which are sending a head of state or government. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz are set to appear. US President Joe Biden will not, but the White House will send Vice President Kamala Harris and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Yeah, I'm glad they're sending at least Jake Sullivan, not just Kamala Harris there. Amrid denied that Switzerland was disappointed that fewer than 100 countries would attend after about 160 invites were sent. The invitation list is sought to drum up support among countries that have better relations with Moscow and then leading Western powers. Key developing countries like Turkey and South Africa have not indicated whether they will attend. India, the Swiss said, will take part, but it remains unclear at what level. The final list of participants is expected by Friday. Okay, so we probably won't know till Friday for that. Brazil and China said they would not take part unless both sides, including Russia, were at the table, according to Swiss officials. Beijing last week rejected accusations from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that he was trying to, in cooperation with Russia, to undermine the summit by putting pressure on other countries not to attend. Yeah, they strongly denied that. We covered that here on the channel already, that any of that took place, but we don't know that for sure. Switzerland's Foreign Minister Igor Cassis said that his country believes there cannot be a peace process without Russia, suggesting efforts would be made to bring Moscow to the table later. The question is not whether Russia will be on board, the question is when, he told a news conference. The conference aims to reach a common understanding towards lasting peace and draw up a roadmap on how to get both sides involved, the official said. Nuclear security, humanitarian aid and food security, freedom of navigation and prisoners of war are other issues on the agenda. Switzerland said it plans to deploy as many 4,000 military personnel to provide security at the event. Ahmed said that cyber attacks had increased in recent weeks, while noting personnel attacks at her in Russian media have been publicized in Switzerland. We haven't summoned the ambassador, she said. That's how I wanted it because the disinformation campaign is so extreme that no one can see that little it reflects reality. Kaz said he was clear interest in disrupting the talks, but avoided saying who was behind the attacks. It's entirely possible it may be Russia, but they are not. They want Russia at that table. They want Russia at that table. They want to have those discussions. Obviously, my position is very clear: is that Russia should give back the territory, and there should be. But there are also very clear consensus that Russia need. But we know that even if Ukraine had agreed to stay neutral, agreed not to join the EU, agreed not to join NATO, all that kind of stuff, right? They agreed to remain neutral between the West and Russia. There's still no guarantee that Russia wouldn't invade again in the future. There's no guarantee of that. So we just don't have that trustworthiness now. Like even putting a signed agreement or whatnot, can you trust Vladimir Putin and Russia to do that? No. There's no guarantee of that. And I think if there was that, I would. Part of me does feel that they could compromise by giving some territory to Russia. So not all of it, not all the territory they have so far, but I would fight. Yeah, I would say if I was Zelensky on that negotiation, I would say we want Crimea back. You know, you can't have Crimea. We want Crimea back. Crimea is our land. Is the argument I would make, and I know it obviously, but Russia will push you because they want more control of the Black Sea, obviously as well. There's not just obviously that, as they said, the amount of prisoners. Like we have lots and lots of Ukrainian children who have been taken by Russia and are still being held by them as well, who haven't been given back. Let's not to mention all the prisoners that have been captured on both sides, the losses of life, the damage that has been done to the Ukrainian economy as well. So there's lots of issues to take place. It's not just ending the conflict. There's lots of other things around it. And obviously all the money that's been poured into Ukraine to fund the war, to keep them going as well. You know, a lot of money has been poured in from the America, European Union, the UK and other Western allies as well. So yes, there's lots of things to discuss about the plans, whatever happens at the end of this war, for sure, guys. So yeah. But first, before we go to the next one, guys, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. So doing any of those things really does help support the channel. So you can do any of those things, hitting the like button, sharing this across social media, subscribing, leaving a comment down below. All that stuff really does help the YouTube algorithm. So thank you for everyone who does that. It's greatly appreciated. So this next one I've got for you guys is from Middle Eastern Eye. The headline is the US apparently was involved in Israel's rescue operation that killed over 200 Palestinians. So for those who weren't aware, I've covered this on Rumble, this video, the story separately. So if you want to check that out, the link for Rumble is in the link for the Rumble page is in the description. But 4 captives were released and taken back to Israel from Gaza as Israelis bomb pound central Gaza. So there was a massive rescue operation from Israel, but it cost so many innocent lives. But apparently the US were involved in this. Now I was not aware that the US was involved in this, but as at the same time as well, people have said we should not have been as surprised that the US are not involved in some of Israelis operations, because initially the US did not want Israel commencing operations in Rafah, but they've kind of just said things publicly but still allow things to go. Excuse me. And yeah, this is really this really does actually make me feel really sad, because obviously what happened on this operation, just for me, was it worth it to get these captives, over 200 Palestinians? Was it worth it is the question I think we need to ask ourselves. And the answer is no, it was not worth it. I don't think it was. Don't get me wrong, what Hamas done, and I'm going to keep repeating this, the cows come home. What Hamas did on October 7th was absolutely disgusting and horrendous, and they should pay for their atrocities. But the way that Israel have responded and conducted themselves in this war has been nothing short of absolutely atrocious. And another 200 innocent Palestinians have died as a result of this operation. So the United States supported the Israeli military in rescuing 4 Israeli captives from Gaza on Saturday in a complex daytime operation. Now, why did they do it in the day? I have no idea. It should have been done in night, in my honest opinion. That killed over 200 Palestinians in Nusret, and multiple news agencies have reported. A US official told Axios that a US cell station in Israel supported the Israeli military operation, with the New York Times later reporting that the US provided intelligence and other logistical support. Citing a source familiar with the matter, CNN reported there were no US boots on the ground, adding that America's cell had been in place since October the 7th, supporting Israel with information gathering. However, videos circulating online on Saturday show a helicopter taking off from the beach in Gaza, where the US pier, with the US pier in the backdrop. 2 US officials told CBS News that the pier was not used in operation, and in a series of statements released later on Saturday, US Central Command CENTCOM said that the pier facility, including its equipment, personnel and assets, were not used in the operation to rescue hostages today in Gaza. This is what they're stressing, that obviously America are stressing they weren't a part of this at all. The temporary pier on the coast of Gaza was put in place for one purpose only: to help move additional urgently needed life-saving assistance to Gaza, CENTCOM said in a separate post on X, formerly known as Twitter. The video circulating on Hebrew social media claims a helicopter rescued 4 captives from central Gaza on Saturday, confirming Israel's use of American temporary pier. This operation resulted in the killing of over 210 Palestinians there. Not going to play the video just in case of any kind of copyright. So earlier on Saturday, the Israeli army said it targeted terrorist infrastructure in the Nusret area, north of the town of Deir al-Barir, in the center of the besieged enclave. The Palestinian government media office said in Gaza that the death toll from the Israelis' attack reached at least 236, with 400 more wounded. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed that a large number of dead and wounded Palestinians had arrived at Al-Aziz Martyrs Hospital. It said most of them were women and children. So once again, more innocent lives have been lost. And the worst thing is obviously, and this is the most infuriating thing, the hospitals are already struggling. The hospitals are already overwhelmed as it is. A lot of them don't have medicines. A lot of them don't have some of the basic functions that they need to keep running. So a lot of these people who are wounded, many of them will die because they don't have the They don't have the doctors or the medicines that they need because there's just not enough people to help them. The occupation has annihilated the Foskis refugee camp. Innocent and unarmed civilians were bombed in their homes. I've never seen anything like this. It's a catastrophe, the local resident Nigel Aldo told MEE. I came from the camp here in the hospital and on foot. I can't describe how we fled. I saw dead children and body parts strewn all over as we fled. No one was able to assist them. I saw an elderly man killed on an animal-drawn cart. Nusret was being annihilated. It was hell. Khalid al-Ari, another resident, told MEE that Israeli forces began bombing Nusret following the early morning rescue operation. Israeli warplanes began bombing us in all directions to cover up the withdrawal process that had taken place. I do not know exactly what happened because I was taking shelter on the ground, but I could hear the sound of gunfire and of shells falling. Hamas released a statement on Saturday condemning US complicity in the operation. It said American participation in the criminal operation that was carried out today proves once again the complicit role of the American administration, its full participation in the war crimes committed in the Gaza Strip, and the falsifying of its declared position of the humanitarian situation and of its concerns for the lives of civilians. Hamas said the announcement of the release of a number of prisoners in Gaza, referring to the rescued Israeli captives, would not change Israel's strategic failure in the Gaza Strip after 8 months of massacres, genocide, siege, and starvation. One valiant resilient still maintains the largest number in its possession and is capable of increasing yield of prisoners, the statement said. Later on Saturday, the Israeli army said the 4 captives, I won't repeat all their names, but these were the 4 captives here, were in good health and taken to hospital for medical checks for evaluation. Israeli police said that a military commander, Andrew Zamra, was killed in the mission. All 4 were captured by Hamas on October the 7th from the Supernova music festival that in pictures on Saturday appeared to show Al-Mali hung her father after being rescued. Hugged her father, sorry. The heroic operation by the Israeli army that freed and brought them home is a miraculous triumph for the hostages and missing families, Forum said in a statement. Hours after the rescue operation, protests erupt across Israel, with thousands demanding Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu approve a permanent ceasefire deal with Hamas that would see the release of all Israeli captives. There are hostages still there and we need to get them all out, said Michael Levy, whose brother is still being held captive in Gaza. The Israeli military won't be able to release them all in military operations. We've still got to get a deal and seal it soon. He's absolutely right. Commencing letter on Saturday, spokesperson of Hamas, Qasim Brigade, said other captives have been killed during the rescue operation. Earlier this week, the Israeli military announced it had verified the deaths of 4 Israelis held by Hamas based on newly acquired intelligence. According to Israel's daily Haraskers, the Israeli army were checking whether they were killed by the group. All 4 captives were known to be alive when they entered Gaza. 4 more other names here were believed to have been together in the Khan Yunus area and to have died together several months ago. In December, Hamas published a video of Peri, Cooper, Mescus alive, and in March, Hamas and said that the 3 were killed by Israeli strikes. The bodies of all 4 are being held by Hamas, the Israeli army had said. Israel's war on Gaza, now in its 9th month, has turned much of the enclave, which is home to more than 2 million Palestinians, into an uninhabitable hellscape. Whole neighborhoods have been erased, homes, schools, hospitals have been devastated by airstrikes and scorched by a fire tank. Nearly the entire population is reported to have fled their homes, and those who remained in northern Gaza are on the verge of famine. More than 36,000 people have been killed, the great majority of them women and children. Thousands more are missing or presumed to be dead under the rubble. Like, why can we not just shun out a deal here? You know, if they generally cared about the captives, they would have negotiated a deal. But we know they're not going to negotiate a deal. We know where Benjamin Netanyahu stands, and he wants to drag this on as long as possible. We really do, because we know that if a peace deal comes through, first and foremost, obviously, there are those within his cabinet who want this war to continue because they are far right, and they would rather see Gaza burnt to the ground, pretty much, because they want the whole land for themselves, Israel, which would be absolutely outrageous if the world stood by and allowed that to happen. But mind you, we stood by and allowed them to take territory in the West Bank and not done anything about it either. The other thing as well is obviously that an election would be called if Netanyahu was to get that ceasefire. The war would finally stop, a permanent one, and he knows he'll get kicked he'll get kicked out. He knows that. So he doesn't want to lose that power. He's been in power for quite a while now. He would not want to give up that power. That's the problem. When people are in power, they just don't want to give it up. So that's the other thing as well. Obviously, there was the war. One of the cabinet ministers resigned a few days ago, obviously as well, because he expected like some kind of way out in this scenario, and that hasn't happened either. So yeah, and I covered that in a separate story on Rumble if anyone wants to hear that. But the US being involved, so they're stressing obviously that no US soldiers were involved. The reality is we don't know for certain. I think if there was US soldiers directly involved, I think there would have been footage online of it. And I've not seen any footage online of this operation that explicitly involved the US soldiers. Now, if somebody has seen it, please send me a link on Discord and I'll have a look. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that America was not involved, I don't think, directly, militarily. Would they had spies and intel sources within Hamas? Yeah, it's very possible. But I don't think they were directly in this operation. But either way, 200 Palestinians lost their lives in this, guys. And yeah, it's another loss of life, a tragedy that did not need to happen. So, guys, I'm going to take a little break here from this. Got a couple more articles to cover, guys, here on the World's Newsround. So, thank you if you've been watching all the way through so far. This one is a bit of a weird one. I'll see how much you guys like your gangster films here. This YouTube channel is from Fire and Arms. We use them quite a lot here on the World's Newsround. And this one is titled "Gangster Can't Pronounce His H's." Yes, you have to listen carefully to understand.
What's going on? Who are you?
Quiet. You want to get it?
Well, it depends what it is. Just let me go. I'll make it worth your while.
How?
Did you hurt yourself? You really shouldn't be punching people.
Now listen up. You're gonna do as we say.
Of course, yes.
First, you're gonna call Harry.
Harry. Who's Harry?
Harry. You know him.
I'm afraid I don't know him either.
Don't lie to us.
I'm not. I assure you, I've never met an him, even during my extensive travels in Southeast Asia.
Not him. Him. Harry and.
Harry and whom?
No, that's his name.
It's a very unusual name. I'm sure I'd remember if I met him.
As in your hand. Harry and.
Hand! Harry Hand!
Yes, Harry
Oh,
Hand.
the bank manager. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, of course I know him.
Yeah.
Known him for years.
Right. You're gonna meet him tonight.
This fellow him again.
No, Harry. You're getting the money off Harry.
This is all very confusing.
Are you triumphing? We got pictures of you in that oar.
Pictures of me with an oar?
Yeah.
Must be from my days at the Oxford Rowing Society. I mean, it's embarrassing, yes, but hardly blackmail material.
No, the oar. The Lucy.
My whore!
Yeah.
Oh, you bastard, what have you done with her?
You don't play along. We're gonna arm Lucy.
Nonsense, she'd never let you. She's a pacifist. Hates guns.
There are two banks, yeah?
Uh,
You've got North London, and I've got Acne.
no, there's nothing wrong with your skin, my man.
Right, that's it. You're gonna get it right here.
No, please! Here. I'm going to get it right here. You can't pronounce your H's. That all makes sense now. Have you ever seen that movie, My Fair Lady? In Hertford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
Shut it. Right?
Yes.
Right, you're gonna be quiet, right? Mm-hmm. Now you see him.
The infamous him.
Just him over there.
Oh, him.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's got a big sharp knife, and he's pretty handy.
It's not a very intimidating nickname, is it? Pretty Andy. Oh, it's handy.
Silence!
Yes.
I will explain this in simple English.
Oh, that'd be a change, eh?
Harry Hand happens to have an eyes for an FD all. He is hoping to make the hand over to someone, how you say, honorable. Henceforth, he is hoping you will help.
Can we go back to him?
I miss.
I don't think that was very ideal from him. Oh, that was a good one. I don't know how that one's been there for quite a while, guys. But I really got a laugh out of that one. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Needed a bit of a gangster funny one, but definitely a little bit different, guys. So, what has been going on in France, guys? Things are kind of taken a bit of a jump there, isn't it? So, after obviously the outcome of the EU elections, all of a sudden, French parties hold emergency talks with the possible allies for a snap election. The country braces for its most consequential poll in decades after a decision by Macron in response to the far-right surge in EU votes. So, what is Macron doing here? So I've listened to one or two videos on this, and I have to say, like, this is quite a gamble from Macron. Now, obviously, I'm not as deep into French politics as some others, but what I do know is that obviously the clock is kind of, we know that the clock is kind of ticking, and Marine Le Pen has been making gains. She's definitely appealing to people within France. The so-called far-right rhetoric in there. Obviously, migration has been something that's obviously been something on the minds of the French people, and Macron has sought to try and woo that with his immigration policy, to try and win over and woo those voters. But what is the reason behind this? Now, this may be an attempt to try and show up the support of Macron, and basically saying, the country doesn't really want you. I'm going to call a snap election and show it. And it could very much backfire, but let's read into this, guys, just to get our heads a bit more around this. So political parties in France held emergency talks to sound out potential allies on Monday as the country braced for its most consequential legislative elections in decades. Called by Emmanuel Macron after being roundly defeated by the far right in the European parliamentary elections. The National Rally RN won about 32% of the vote on Sunday, more than double the 15% or so scored by the president's allies. According to exit polls, the Socialists on 14 came within a whisker of the Macron group. Macron's liaisons party has 169 deputies in the National Assembly, and the RN is 88. The unexpected and risky decision to hold an election so soon could hand major political power to the far right after years on the sidelines, and new to Macron's presidency 3 years before it ends. If the far-right party wins an outright majority, the president would be in effect lose control over the most French domestic policy. This would be the most consequential parliamentary election in France, and for the French in the history of the Fifth Republic, the finance minister Bruno Le Maire told RLT Radio. We must fight for France and for the French. We have 3 weeks to campaign and convince the French. Emmanuel Pellegrin, a Renaissance Party MP, said he and his colleague were still in shock, adding, everyone points to the RN winning a relative or absolute majority, but that forces the French to think about what is at stake. The legislative vote will take place on the 30th of June, less than a month before the start of the Paris Olympics, with the second round on the 7th of July. The results are likely to depend on how committed the left-wing and centre-right voters are to keep the far-right away from power. The president's move caught some far-right leaders off guard. We didn't think it would be immediately after the European elections, even if we wanted it to be, the Iron Deputy Chair Sebastian Chou said on RTL Radio. Elections are rarely a gift, and in this context they aren't. He called for right-wing lawmakers from outside the RN to swell its ranks in its battle to beat Macron, and said the party's tantanic president, the 28-year-old Jordan Bardella, would be its candidate for Prime Minister. Barbella's mentor, Marine Le Pen, who was runner-up in the last two presidential elections, has remained party leader in Parliament and is largely expected to run again in 2027. Bardella, Le Pen, and Le Pen's niece, Madeleine Mresky, who is headed the list of the far-right Reganelite party in the EU elections, met at the RN's headquarters on Monday afternoon to discuss the possible election coalition. Early on Monday evening, Bardella and Mresky had a constructive approach towards the RN, and said he hopes to force as large a majority as possible, he said. I'm perfectly prepared to talk to people who share the ambitions in bringing some of our ideas to power. The leaders of the very divided French left, the hard left LFI, France Unbold, Communists, Socialists and Greens also held emergency talks after Macron's announcement. We don't have time to procrastinate, LFI's Macron's armies told reporters. The object is to be able to meet again to build a future and above all to go and win. Analysts have said that an outright far-right majority is unlikely, partly because voters often use European elections as a low-cost way of delivering a kick to the incumbent government, and things may well turn out differently in the parliamentary elections. Macron's gamble is being seen as an attempt to make the best of this weak position by reclaiming his initiative and forcing the RN into election mode faster than it would have liked. The president will be aiming to rally centre and leftist voters at a time where there is widespread shock after a far-right surge across the continent. A source close to Macron said the president was going for the win, and then that the idea was to mobilise the voters who had stayed away on Sunday. There's audacity in this decision, risk-taking. There's always been a part of our political DNA, the source said. But another source close to Macron has said, I knew this option was on the table, but when it became reality, it's something else. I didn't sleep last night. Yeah, this is massive. It's a massive gamble from him. Announcing the decision on Sunday night, Macron said he could not pretend nothing had happened in the European elections. I've decided to give you a choice. Therefore, I will dissolve the National Assembly tonight, he said. The president acknowledged that the decision was very serious and heavy, but called it an act of confidence. He said he had confidence in the capacity of the French people to make the best choice for themselves and for future generations, adding, this is an essential time for clarification. I have heard your message, your concerns, and I will not leave them unanswered. France needs a clear majority to act in scenery and harmony. Not everyone was convinced by the move. Yaki Balopilic, a senior figure within Macron's party, who served as Speaker of the lower house, appeared to express some doubts on Monday morning, indicating that forming a coalition with other parties in the French parliament could have been a better path. The president believes that this path did not exist. I take note of that decision, she told France 2 TV. Raphael, who is head of the Socialist Party list, said Macron had given in to Bardilla. And this is a dangerous game to play with democracy and the institutions. I am flabbergasted. Another critic, a senior figure in the conservative Les Republicanis party, said, dissolving without giving anyone time to organise and without any campaigning is playing Russian roulette with the country's destiny. Well, this is exactly what, to be fair, like, Sunak is doing that with us, but it's good to call it out of the blue. But everyone had made up their minds over there. The mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, said the decision to send France to the polls just weeks before the capital hosts the Olympic Games at the end of July was extremely troubling. Yeah, they want to focus on the Olympics, but this is kind of throwing everything this is a bit of a turmoil. It's going to be pandemonium for the French. But the head of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, attempted to play down such concerns, saying the elections were a democratic process that won't disrupt the games. He added, France is used to holding elections and they will do it once again. There will be a new parliament, a new government, and everyone will support the Olympic Games. Yeah, they will support the Olympic Games, without a doubt. But this is a massive gamble from Macron, and it really, I think he knows that, he doesn't have control in the parliament. He knows he doesn't have control. And he's pretty much saying, like, you guys don't, like, he's pretty much putting the ball in the court of the French people, saying, you guys don't trust me. Well, now I'm going to put it on you. The emphasis is on you. Either back me now or back me now. You've made me your president, and you've clearly made your voices heard in the EU Parliament. Well, now I want you to put it here now in this snap election. Like, he really wants to make the French people say, look, like, if you trust me, if you trust my party, if you really doubt my party, then let's put it to a vote. He's really putting that, saying, yeah, you can make those votes in the EU, but are you going to make the same thing domestically? I think it's the pressure. So he really is challenging the French people to say, look, stand with me, stick by me, trust me and what I've done for France. I don't know if they're going to... I just don't think so. I just don't think this is going to work. I think this could potentially make things worse rather than better. Obviously, like I said, I don't know French politics, but I know, obviously, things have not been going in the right way for his party. They've been slowly losing control, and Le Pen has been gaining more and more power with the coalitions that she has, and she could extend that power even more on this. So, it's not good, guys. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on this. Obviously, kind of another goddamn election to look at this year. Oh god, as if we ain't got enough on our plates as it is, guys. But anyways, let's hope. Well, the good news is that the French people will be able to make their choice. So obviously, don't have a lot of time yet for them, so they'll have to see how things go. So before I go to the next article, guys, I just want to say, guys, if you want to financially support me in the work that I do here, one of the best ways to do that is by becoming a YouTube member. You can be a YouTube member for as little as 99p or $2.99 memberships. Being either one of those levels has its perks and benefits, such as custom emojis, commenting on any of my videos I will give responses to as well. And $2.99 members get early access to additional content, and you guys also get access to community members' posts and whenever I post them up as well. So some of the custom emojis that you can get to use in the premieres and live chat are some of the gang here, like Ollie, Pingu, and Cash Dummy, and the power of the orb. You empower the orb when you are a YouTube member as well. So anyone who does any of those things, there they are in all their glory. The lava lamp has not been formed yet. It will be formed soon, guys. Don't worry. So if you want to do any of those ways of financially supporting me, thank you very much. It's really appreciated. Other ways of financially supporting me, if you didn't want to do it via YouTube member, there are other ways you could do it. Any super chats are obviously greatly appreciated. Another way is by buying me a coffee. The link is in the description. And also joining the Patreon as well for exclusive content on there as well. So thank you to everyone who has financially supported me in any way, shape or form. It really does make a massive difference to me, and it really does support the channel and allows me to continue to do the work that I do here. So thank you to everyone who has done so far. So the next one I've got for you guys is from NBC News, and it's an interesting and a fascinating one, but it's also a very worrying one indeed. So after his historically guilty verdict, Trump is focused on revenge. So the former president has done at least 5 interviews since his guilty verdict, and in all 5 he has talked about possible retribution. So obviously we had a Snowflake Corner special where we talked about the guilty verdict, the outcome of it and whatnot, but he's been saying a lot about payback, making people suffer, and his retribution obviously he wants on those who have done this to him. And I am actually generally concerned about the well-being of the jurors who were part of this trial. I'm concerned about the judges' safety. I'm concerned about the prosecutors. I'm concerned about everyone who was involved in this case, because if Trump comes to power, if Trump becomes the president again, he will no doubt go out of his way to make sure to try to smear, undermine anything to make the people who made him guilty on these guilty counts pay for what they did, for simply doing their duty, following the law that is in America, and that is what I fear. And because he is going to rip apart the very foundations and constitutions that America stands for. He's going to rip it all apart. And that really does scare me. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong in that he becomes president and he doesn't lay a finger on any of the jurors who were part of it, on any of the prosecutors or the judge. But this man clearly is not letting what happened go too kindly. So Donald Trump wants to talk about revenge, and neither Sean Hannity nor Dr. Phil can soften him. Both have tried. Fresh off his guilty verdict in New York, Trump's public comments, including in interviews with both men, have increasingly focused on the idea of retribution against his enemies if he returns to the White House. His rhetoric has been driven by Trump's obsession that President Joe Biden and Democrats orchestrated a series of legal problems intended to derail his presidential campaign, a political persecution theory not supported by the facts. On the 30th of May, a New York jury unanimously found Trump guilty on 34 counts relating to falsifying a business records tied to a $130,000 payment he made to an adult film star during a 2016 election. The Biden administration had nothing to do with the case. But for Trump, it's all politics, and revenge may be mended out. Well, revenge does take time, I will say that, Trump said during a Thursday interview with Dr. Phil. And sometimes revenge can be justified. Phil, I have to be honest, sometimes it can. Trump has done at least 5 interviews since his guilty verdict. In all 5, he's talked about possible retribution. I think there should be concern, said T.Y. Cobb, the attorney who served as a White House attorney during the Trump administration. From a 30,000-foot view, I can see is Trump's angrier now than he was before because he is convicted now. President Trump has made it clear that success will be the best revenge, Trump's senior advisor Brian Hughes said. When others have weaponized government and legal institutions against him for political interference, he will return these institutions to their constitutional purpose for protecting America's liberty and creating a safe and prosperous nation again. What? There's no... There's no evidence that the Democrats and the Biden administration were involved in any of this. The Dr. Phil interview came one day after Trump sat down with Hannity and at times seemed to debate himself over the idea of exacting revenge. At one point, Trump said, "They're wrong," when the Fox News host asked about who says Trump will use his administration for revenge. But in the same breath, he laid out potential opportunities. "Look, when this election is over, based on what they've done, I would have done every right to go after them," Trump said. "And it's easy because it's Joe Biden. You see all the criminality, all the money that is going to the family and him, all this money from Russia, from China, from Ukraine." Hannity tried to steer Trump away from the idea of revenge and at one point interrupting to try and encourage him to say political retribution has to stop. Dr. Phil, too tired to get Trump to say he would not seek revenge if he wins in November. That is the big issue that I've learned very strongly into this position of saying, look, this is not going to help the country, Dr. Phil told CNN in an interview with Trump. In other interviews and public appearances, Trump has made similar comments. On Tuesday, in an interview with the conservative outlet Newsmax, Trump seemed to float the possibility of imprisoning his political opponents if he becomes president again. So, it's a terrible path that they're leaning us to, and it's very possible that they're going to have to happen again, Trump has said. Does that mean the next president does this to them? That's really the question, he added. He also suggested there would be a breaking point for the public if he is sentenced to jail time or house arrest as he awaits his sentencing on July the 11th. An open desire to seek revenge on political enemies is not something new for Trump or his supporters. While still president in 2020, Trump took to social media to ask where are all the arrests, echoing his supporters' criticism of his own Attorney General William Barr has not arrested the likes of Biden, former President Barack Obama, or Hillary Clinton over what Trump said was illegal activity to try to special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Trump also made "Lock her up" a rally cry during the 2016 campaign against Hillary, promising his supporters he would put the former Secretary of State in jail if elected. Trump recently denied ever saying "lock her up," despite ample videos of him saying just that throughout the 2016 election. Yeah, even though he's blatantly lied right in their faces, they don't care. His supporters don't care. Trump often portrays his call for retribution as something he'll be doing on behalf of all his supporters. "I know a lot of Republicans who want retribution," Trump told NBC News on Wednesday at Mar-a-Lago. "They want to do that. We're going to see what happens." He told that crowd at the 2023 Conservative Political Action Conference that, "For those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution." In January, he said on Fox News that he is not going to have time for retribution if elected. Comments came just hours before he sent out a fundraising email telling supporters, "I am your retribution." But as the full weight of the legal problems came into view this year, and especially since his guilty verdict, his revenge-fueled language has taken centre stage. Even Hannity recognised that this was dangerous territory and tried to wheel him in, said Cobb, who, while at the White House, helped coordinate the internal response to Mueller's Russia probe. Trump would have none of it. Cobb said he believes that the nation's institutions would hold up if Trump tried to seek clearly political motivated revenge, but that it was a situation nonetheless was fraught with peril. "I think the checks and balances are inadequate to withstand these instances because he has to get people to carry them out," he added. For Trump's political base and renewed focus on exacting revenge from political opponents and his support. "I agree with him," said Adam Roglier, a 35-year-old Trump supporter from Cleveland. "Obviously nothing, against the law, but he's just saying, hey, how are you going to go after you because you're going after me?" Parker Schultz, a 22-year-old Trump supporter from Floraville, Michigan, said it was about accountability. I would say revenge is a campaigning buzzword, but accountability would seem more apt," he said. Calls for revenge seeking among Trump supporters again intensified Thursday when a federal judge ordered former Trump advisor Steve Bannon to report to prison on July the 1st to start a 4-month sentence for defying subpoenas from the January the 6th committee. The news angered Trump supporters and prompted Bannon to issue direct threats. "They don't pray for me, pray for my enemies," Bannon said on Thursday. "They're the ones who need it." In response to Bannon being ordered to prison, Trump posted on Truth Social that members of the January 6th committee should be indicted. "Indict the unselected January the 6th committee for illegally deleting and destroying all of their findings," Trump wrote. Yeah, it's very dangerous. I don't like this direction at all. It's incredibly scary, guys. It's incredibly scary, the direction that we are going. I don't like this at all. And oh dear. He's not going to let this go. Like, we're all happy that Steve Bannon is getting jail time, and rightfully so, but man, oh man, they're just riling up the supporters consistently, completely unignored, unignoring the facts, not listening to the reality of what's in front of them. They just don't care of the supporters. They really, really don't. Man, this election in America really is going to put the world on edge if Trump is re-elected again. It's going to be really bad for the world if Trump is re-elected again. It's very scary. It's very, very scary indeed. I do worry. I do really worry about all this, this talk of revenge and everything. It's just like, yeah, it's not a very good look at all, guys. Very, very worrying about it all. Let's move on, guys. So this next one, guys, I'm probably going to leave this one as the last one. I was going to do an update on the war in Ukraine, but given we're over an hour, I'll leave it out with this last one, guys. An interesting one, to say the least. So this is not the first time that Russia have had ships in this area, but it obviously does raise eyebrows, that is for sure, especially from America. So this is from a report from CNN. Russian naval ships, including nuclear-powered submarines, are to visit Cuba. Now, are we surprised by this? No. Should we be surprised by this? The thing is that obviously any kind of Russian warships or submarines or anything like that anywhere near Cuba should be raising alarm bells for America anyway. But do we think that they are going to cause a problem? I don't think so. I don't think it's an act of a provocation of war. I just think, obviously, we know Cuba has a very powerful. We know where Cuba stands in its relationship with Russia, but it does raise some eyebrows for sure. So let's read a little bit into this, guys. So, a group of Russian naval ships, including a nuclear-powered submarine, will visit Cuba next week as part of a historical friendly relations, Cuba's government said on Thursday. The Russian frigate Goskrich, the nuclear-powered submarine Kazgin, the fleet oil tanker Pushkin, and the rescue tug Nikolai Klitschko will visit the port of Havana between June the 12th and the 17th, according to Cuba's Revolutionary Armed Forces in a statement published by the Foreign Ministry. Cuba says none of its ships carry nuclear weapons and insists their stopover does not represent a threat in to the region. Visits by naval units and from other countries are a historical practice of the revolutionary government with nations that maintain relations of friendship and collaboration, the statement said. Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba. CNN has reached out for the Russian government for comment. It is not the first time Russian naval ships have been sent to Cuba, a key ally to the former Soviet Union during the Cold War that briefly hosted nuclear missiles at Moscow's behest during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Last July, the Russian Navy training class ship Pedro sailed into Havana for a 4-day visit. The latest visit appears to be the largest of its kind in years. Cuba is increasingly reliant on Russia oil and aid as the communist-run country weathers its worst economic crisis in decades. Cuban announcement comes days after US President Joe Biden gave Ukraine permission to carry out limited strikes inside Russia's territory with American munitions in response. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Western countries supplying weapons to a conflict zone is always a bad thing. In the end, if we see these countries becoming involved in a war against us, what they are doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation. We reserve the right to act the same way, Putin said on Wednesday. Putin also added in response, we will improve our air defense systems to destroy the missiles, and he also asked why Russians would not have the right to supply our weapons of the same class to those regions of the world where there will be strikes on the sensitive facilities of those countries that are doing this against Russia. Russia's military is expected to increase its naval and air activity near the United States this summer as part of a routine maneuver in the lead up to a global naval exercise in the fall, according to the US State Department and the Pentagon. Russia is likely to send combat naval vessels to the Caribbean with potential port calls in Cuba and possibly Venezuela, Pentagon spokesperson Charlie Dulles said on Thursday. Aircraft deployment or flights in the region are also anticipated. These deployments are part of Russian routine naval operations and pose no direct threat to the United States. Alongside Russian ships this summer will also be one of Russia's naval Seleucus 2 class submarines, Dida said. The port calls that for submarines was approved at least part due to Havana's displeasure over the visit of a US nuclear submarine to the US Guantanamo Bay naval base in Cuba last year, he said. Cuba has hosted Russian ships every year between 2013 and 2020, Diaz said, adding that the exercise imposes a significant cost to the Russian Navy, which faces challenges in maintaining readiness and conducting deployments with an aging fleet. Given Russia's long history of Cuban port calls, these are considered routine naval visits, especially in the context of increased US support to Ukraine and NATO exercises, Diaz had said. So this is obviously nothing new that Russia have had deployments and naval and some kind of exercises and whatnot, because obviously the relationship between Cuba and Russia. But obviously, given the fact that where it's positioned geography-wise, has always been a major issue. It's always been an annoyance to America, and we know that obviously, given the history, obviously the Cuban Missile Crisis. For those who don't know, during the Cold War, Russia tried to was sending Russian nuclear arms to set up a missile basically place in Cuba that would obviously target America, but the Americans blocked, the naval fleet eventually blocked Russia from sending missiles and whatnot to Cuba, hence why it was called the Cuban Missile Crisis during that Cold War. But is this something that we should be concerned about? No, I don't think it should be something necessarily we should be too concerned about, because it is kind of normal, because obviously the relationship between Cuba and Russia is very, very strong, because obviously they're a communist nation, Cuba. But obviously Cuba are not in a very good place right now, economically wise, as it said in the piece there. But yeah, nothing really much more to add on that, I think, is the best thing to describe it. But it's certainly more food for thought, I think, as well. But yeah, obviously, if anything more comes on this, I'll let you guys know. But I don't think anything is more to add on this, if I'm honest. It might be something, it might be nothing. We will have to see. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Pingu says he approves of Russia visiting Cuba. What's that? Pingu says he wants to visit Cuba one day. I don't think the missus would want me to go on a holiday to Cuba, if I'm honest. I'm a bit skeptical about if I want to go to Cuba. Pingu wants to go to Cuba. I'm not so sure about going on a holiday to Cuba. Maybe some of you guys might want to. Ollie and Cash, are not fans of Cuba, but nothing against their country. I'm sure they're a lovely country to visit, but it's not really on my destination bucket list, shall we say, on that. But enough about me, guys. I want to know, as we have reached the end of the World's News Round, what did you guys think of some of the topics and news coverage we covered today? We covered quite a few things. The EU elections, obviously, France calling a snap election. The atrocity attack that took place on the weekend in Gaza, obviously, as well. What do you guys think about the peace summit that's going to be taking place in Switzerland? What do you guys make of that as well? And Trump obviously being focused on revenge, obviously looking to gain revenge if he becomes president again. What do you guys make of all these stories and more? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section down below. Lend me your feedback. I really would like to know what you guys think of some of these stories and where we could be going on the global stage as a species. Yes, do let me know as well. But just before you go, if you can do this one little thing for me. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.